If your family ever treated you like background noise, this will hurt to hear. Mine mocked my quiet job and praised my sister's fiancé, until he recognized me, froze in fear, and exposed the truth I never planned to reveal. In my family, being quiet was never called calm. It was called forgettable, and I let them believe it. I stood in front of my mother's house with my overnight bag resting against my leg. The porch light glowed warm, but my stomach felt cold. Coming back here always did that to me. It didn't matter how long I stayed away. One step inside, and I was the same person they decided I was years ago. Tonight was my sister Claire's engagement dinner. One night. That's what I promised myself. Smile, eat, leave. No conflict. The door opened before I knocked. My mother pulled me into a quick hug, already turning back toward the noise inside. Voices overlapped. Laughter bounced off the walls. Everyone sounded excited. Everyone except me. Claire stood in the center of it all, hand flashing her ring every time she moved. She looked perfect. She always did when people were watching. Her fiancé, Evan, stood close beside her. Confident in a way that made people trust him fast. "Hey," Claire said, hugging me lightly. "You actually came. I said I would." She smiled, but her eyes scanned me the way they always had, checking for flaws. Then she turned back to Evan and kept talking, as if I had already served my purpose. I drifted toward the edge of the room. That was my place. Always had been. People talked about Evan's work. Emergency response. High-risk operations. The room leaned toward him when he spoke. My mother beamed like his success reflected on her. Claire laughed and glanced my way. Not everyone likes danger. My sister prefers safe and quiet. She's always been that way. Few people chuckled. I smiled because that was easier than correcting her. They never asked why I chose quiet. I shifted my sleeve without thinking, and that's when Evan's eyes dropped to my wrist. Just for a second, but it was long enough. His expression changed. The confidence flickered. His jaw tightened. He looked at me differently after that, like he was trying to remember where he'd seen me before. And that was the moment I knew this night wouldn't stay simple. Because recognition has a way of waking the past. Claire loved an audience. And she loved reminding me who she thought I was. Dinner was loud and crowded. Plates clinked. Glasses filled and emptied. Conversation moved fast, skipping over me without effort. I was used to it. Silence had become my armor a long time ago. Someone across the table asked what I did for work. I opened my mouth, but Claire answered first. "She works behind a desk," she said brightly. "Very safe. Very boring." Laughter followed. "Polite. Easy." He nodded. "That's accurate." But Evan didn't laugh. His eyes stayed on me, focused, sharp. Like he was watching a threat that hadn't moved yet. Claire leaned closer to him. "She's always been careful. Never took risks." "Right." I met his gaze. "I calculate them." That made him pause. That answer landed heavier than it should have. He asked quietly, "Calculate what?" "Outcomes," I said. "Loss." Claire rolled her eyes. "See. Boring." But Evan's posture changed. His shoulders squared. His attention didn't leave me. I pressed my wrist against my thigh, trying to hide the thin metal band there. I hadn't planned to wear it tonight. Habit 1. Mistake. Evan noticed. His hand stilled around his glass. "Where did you get that?" I hesitated. "From work." That was enough. Something settled into his expression then. Not certainty, but suspicion. And respect. Claire kept talking, unaware she was losing control of the room. She told stories about Evan. Hero stories. Big moments. She liked how people listened when she spoke about him. What she didn't notice was how often his eyes drifted back to me. When dinner ended, people stood and moved around. I slipped outside onto the back porch. The night air was sharp and clean. I breathed easier out there. A moment later, the door opened behind me. Evan stepped out. "I'm not trying to be rude," he said carefully. "But that band. I've seen it before. I looked at him. Where? He swallowed. On a screen. During a response briefing. It meant command override. I said nothing. He nodded once, slow. So it's you. And once someone knows, silence gets dangerous. Some memories don't fade. They wait. We stood on the porch without speaking for a few seconds. Inside, laughter spilled through the walls. Out here, everything felt still. I never saw your face, Evan said finally. Just heard your voice. I kept my eyes on the dark trees beyond the yard. That was intentional. He let out a quiet breath. We were trapped. Flooded roads. Comms failing. Then your voice came through. Direct. You told us where to go when our maps went dead. My fingers curled against the cold railing. You rerouted us, he continued. 4 minutes later, the route we would have taken collapsed. I nodded once. That voice saved lives, he said. Including mine. I didn't respond. Gratitude made people careless. He understood why I stayed quiet. I won't tell them, he added quickly. I know better. Good. He glanced toward the house. They don't see you. No, I said. They see what makes them comfortable. Evan nodded. That's not weakness. I looked at him then. Really looked. He wasn't staring at me like a hero. Or a secret. He looked at me like a professional. Respect. That was new. Inside, Claire's voice rose again, sharp and playful. Calling his name. He turned back toward the door. Tomorrow night was dinner at his parents' place. Bigger. Louder. More eyes. I don't want tonight to follow you there, he said. It will, I replied. She won't stop. He hesitated. If she pushes. I can handle it. He searched my face, then nodded. I know. That was the difference. He knew. When he went back inside, I stayed on the porch a moment longer. I adjusted the band on my wrist. I had worn it as a reminder. Of restraint. Of boundaries. Tomorrow it might become something else. And Claire would make sure of it. The second dinner wasn't about love. It was about image. Evan's parents' house sat high in the hills. All glass and warm lights. Everything shined. Everything looked important. Claire loved it instantly. She played her role perfectly. Smiling. Touching Evan's arm. Laughing just a little too loud. I took my seat near the end of the table. Same as always. Conversation flowed. Careers. Achievements. Stories that made people feel impressive. Evan's father asked about my work. Before I answered, Claire jumped in. She analyzes data. Nothing risky. Evan's hand tightened on his fork. Let her speak. The table went quiet. I met his father's eyes. I assess risk and redirect operations to prevent loss. That was all. He blinked. Operations. Yes. Claire laughed nervously. She means office stuff. Evan didn't smile. He told a story then. About a response mission gone wrong. About losing navigation in severe weather. Sounded casual to everyone else. It wasn't. He watched me closely as he spoke. The only reason we made it out, he said, was because remote command corrected our route. I took a sip of water. Thermal mapping stayed stable when surface signals failed. Evan froze. The room didn't notice. But his father did. That's specific, he said. Evan set his glass down slowly. That information wasn't public. Claire frowned. What are you two talking about? He stayed calm. You asked about my job. That was when the balance shifted. Evan leaned back, eyes never leaving me. He wasn't testing anymore. He was confirming. Claire felt it. She reached across the table and grabbed my wrist, laughing. What's this thing anyway? Evan stood so fast his chair scraped loudly. Don't touch that. Every sound stopped. Claire stared at him, shocked. Why are you yelling? Evan's voice dropped, controlled. Because that isn't decoration. He looked at me. You were command. He nodded. His father's face drained of color. My mother's fork slipped from her hand. Claire shook her head. That's not true. Evan turned to her. She outranked everyone on that operation, including me. Silence crushed the room. And there was no way back now. Truth doesn't need to fight, just needs space. And suddenly everyone feels it. No one spoke after Evan's words landed. The silence felt thick, like the air before a storm. I stayed where I was, hands resting calmly on the table, even though my heart was beating fast. I had lived with this truth for years. They were the ones hearing it for the first time. My mother looked at me like she was searching for a stranger's face on mine. "You're saying, you were in charge?" Her voice shook, not with pride but confusion. "I was responsible," I said simply. "That's all." Claire let out a sharp laugh that didn't sound real. "This is insane. She's always been dramatic. Always acting like she's hiding something important." Evan didn't react to her tone. He stayed calm. That scared her more than anger would have. "She wasn't acting," he said. "She was doing her job." His father leaned forward slowly. "Why haven't we heard about this before?" "Because you weren't meant to," I answered. "And because I didn't need recognition to do the work." That was the moment I stopped shrinking. My mother pressed her hands together. "All these years, you let us think." "I let you think what you wanted," I said gently. "Every time I tried to speak, I was told to be quiet. So I listened." Claire stood up, her chair scraping loudly. "You always do this. You wait until the attention is on me, then you take it." I met her eyes, calm and steady. "This isn't about attention. It never was." She opened her mouth to argue, but Evan stepped between us without touching either of us. His voice stayed even, controlled. "She didn't take anything from you," he said. "The truth just showed up." Claire's face flushed. Her perfect night was cracking, and she didn't know how to stop it. She looked around the table, waiting for support. None came. Evan turned to me. "I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry." I nodded once. "You did what you could." I pushed my chair back and stood. The movement felt heavy but right. "Thank you for dinner," I said to the table. "I won't be staying." My mother reached for my arm. "Please. We need to talk." "Not tonight," I replied. "Tonight is for letting things settle." I walked toward the door without rushing. No one followed. No one stopped me. That was new too. Outside, the night air felt cooler, cleaner. I breathed in deeply, like I had been holding my breath for years. Behind me, the door stayed closed. I didn't know it yet, but leaving that table was only the beginning. I didn't leave angry. I left clear. And that confused them more than anything. The cold air hit my face as soon as I stepped outside, sharp enough to ground me. I stood still for a moment, my hand resting on the door handle behind me. Inside, I could hear voices again. Not loud. Not calm either. The kind of sound people make when their world has shifted and they're scrambling to adjust. I let go of the handle and walked toward my car. Halfway down the path, I heard footsteps on the gravel. Evans. I knew his pace now. Controlled. Careful. "Wait," he said. Not a command. Request. I stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said. "For how that happened. For the timing." I faced him then. His expression wasn't defensive or proud. It was weighed down. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "You spoke when it mattered." He nodded slowly. "Claire doesn't understand what just happened." "No," I replied. "She understands. She just doesn't accept it." Acceptance was never her strength. Evan looked back toward the house. The lights glowed warm through the windows, but the feeling inside was gone. "She built her image around being admired," he said quietly. "Tonight cracked that." "That was her choice," I said. "Not mine." He hesitated, then added, "I won't let her belittle you again." I shook my head. "That's not your responsibility." A small smile touched his mouth. "You're right. Old habits." I reached my car and unlocked it, but didn't get in yet. "What happens next is between you and her. I don't need to be part of it." He studied me for a moment. You're not angry. I used to be, I admitted. But anger needs energy. I don't give them that anymore. He exhaled slowly, like someone letting go of a weight they didn't know they were carrying. For what it's worth, I'm grateful. I know, I said. That's enough. I got into the car and closed the door. As I pulled away, I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. That chapter had closed without yelling, without applause, without permission. The drive home felt longer than usual. Not heavy, just quiet. My phone buzzed once. Then again. I didn't check it. At my apartment, I set my keys down and leaned against the counter. The silence there was different. Clean. I slipped the band from my wrist and placed it in the drawer where I kept things I didn't need to explain. Not secrets. Boundaries. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had abandoned anything. I felt like I had chosen myself. I didn't know who would reach out first, but I knew someone would. I expected silence. What I didn't expect was who broke it first. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. My phone sat on the nightstand, dark and quiet. For years, my family had trained me to expect one of two reactions after conflict. Either anger or pretending nothing happened. I wasn't sure which one would come this time. I slipped it back on and looked at my reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back at me wasn't hiding. She just wasn't explaining herself anymore. I poured the tea I had forgotten earlier and sat in the quiet. No buzzing phone. No voices telling me who I was supposed to be. Just space. And clarity. By the time the wedding day arrived, I had already moved on. Silence was never my weakness. It was my discipline. And now it was mine by choice. The day of the wedding arrived without ceremony in my life. I knew the date because it was printed on the invitation still tucked in my drawer, but I didn't wake up thinking about it. I woke up thinking about work. About a briefing scheduled for noon. About the quiet rhythm that had become my normal. Outside my window, the city moved like any other day. People hurried. Cars passed. Somewhere across town, chairs were being set in neat rows. Flowers adjusted, music tested. I wasn't part of that picture, and for the first time I didn't feel like something was missing. I went through my morning routine slowly. Coffee. Shower. Clean clothes. The thin metal band rested on my wrist. Cool and familiar. Not hidden. Not displayed. Just there. At work, the room hummed softly with machines and low voices. Screens glowed. Data flowed. Decisions were made without drama. I focused, the way I always had, on preventing things from going wrong before anyone else ever knew they could. This was where I had always belonged. During a break, my phone buzzed once. A message from Evan. I hope today is peaceful for you. I stared at it for a moment, then typed back. It is. That was the truth. I imagined the ceremony only briefly. Claire walking down the aisle, confident again. Our mother smiling carefully, measuring every expression. Maybe they spoke about me. Maybe they didn't. Either way, it didn't reach me. Power, I had learned, wasn't about being seen. It was about being steady. When my shift ended, the sun was already lowering. I stepped outside and felt the cool air on my face. The world felt wide and quiet in a way that made room for breathing. At home, I stood by the window as night settled in. Lights flickered on across the city. Lives unfolding without my input. Without my permission. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who stayed quiet because she thought she had to. The one who believed being unseen was safer than being misunderstood. I understood her now. She did what she needed to survive. But I wasn't her anymore. I took the invitation from the drawer one last time. Not to read it. Just to acknowledge it. Then I placed it in the recycling bin and closed the lid. No anger. No ceremony. Just closure. I slipped the band from my wrist and held it for a moment, then put it back on. Not as a reminder of the past, but as a symbol of choice. Of knowing when to speak and when not to. Silence had protected me once. Now it belonged to me. And in that quiet, I wasn't small. I was finally free.